Part 7. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xionglang Guo. Chapter 61. Li Anping grabbed Kano with one hand and was about to tear him apart and pull him back. But he found that his hand was lighter, and the blood and flesh had turned into clear water. Kano liquefied his body again. But when he activated the ability of liquefaction while being seriously injured and incomplete, his condition became worse. Like a piece of jelly that collapsed, he was slow to react and didn't move much. Only a few tentacles that grew out were still shaking slightly, indicating that he was still alive. It's just a delay. But this delaying method eliminated some of Li Anping's original concerns. He stretched his head towards the clear water on the ground and began to suck it. The water surface was violently churning, and countless waters splashed, showing how excited Kano was now. Li Anping actually drank the water he had transformed. "You dare to eat me?" Looking at the excited shaking of the water surface, Li Anping said nothing, but just increased the speed to suck all the remaining water into his mouth, and then swallowed it. "Ha ha ha ha, you are courting death." Kano thought so, and as soon as he entered Li Anping's body, the water he turned into was ready to make a scene. But an unprecedented sense of weakness invaded his consciousness. He felt that his body was shrinking. As soon as Li Anping drank the water, it began to be absorbed by the stomach and small intestine, and was directly integrated into Li Anping's blood through the epithelial cells, turning into plasma, and then the water molecules in the plasma were transported to the whole body. Originally, humans did not need to undergo physical and chemical digestion to drink water, but could absorb it directly. And Li Anping's absorption ability was dozens or even hundreds of times that of ordinary people, let alone his digestion ability. The moment Kano turned into clear water and drank it, it was almost absorbed. When he struggled to climb out, he found that his body was so weak that he could not move. He wanted to activate his ability, wanted to spray venom, wanted to emit flames, and wanted to raise his temperature. But he was too weak because most of his body had been absorbed, and he couldn't even activate his ability. At this time, his body had almost been completely absorbed, with only the last bit of consciousness remaining in the last drop of water. Am I going to die? I'm not willing to accept it. I'm so unwilling to accept it. Why? I'm invincible, I have invincible power, how could I fail? I'm going to kill you. My power is invincible. I'll come back and kill you all. Kano shouted in his heart, but no one except himself could hear his last words. As the last drop of water was absorbed by Li Anping, Kano's consciousness, or soul, felt a suction coming from above. This suction was so strong that Kano could not resist it. It directly sucked him in. Whether it was his body or his soul, Kano was 100% dead. Li Anping, who had completely absorbed Kano, only felt an explosive force appearing in his body. A large amount of heat appeared from Li Anping's body surface, and his body swelled red. His muscles kept beating, as if something was about to break out of the cocoon. What's going on? Don't be nervous, this is his ability, the so-called power of evolution. After you eat Kano, his remaining power will transform your body, making it stronger and more suitable for fighting. Li Anping half knelt on the ground before listening to what He said next. His whole body was getting hotter and hotter. The explosive power had spread throughout his body. Every cell and every piece of his flesh seemed to be changing. The heat preservation and insulation ability is too poor, adding insulation and insulation layers under the epidermis. The outer shell increases the respiratory system and increases the oxygen absorption capacity. Covering the stratum corneum, enhancing muscle elasticity, and increasing the body's defense. Bone strengthening needs to be strengthened, the number of hand bones needs to be increased, more flexible, the number of chest bones needs to be reduced, and the thickness and width need to be increased, the strength of the arm bones needs to be increased. Change the way of nerve transmission, it also needs to be faster. Increase the number of blood proteins, strengthen cell activity and muscle strength, immunity, endurance, lymph. Li Enping's whole body was constantly being strengthened, or evolved, in full view of the public. His body structure also became more and more non-human. Although he didn't seem to have changed except for the large amount of hot air coming out of him, he had undergone earth-shaking and incredible changes in his body. Bang! A punch made a small hole in the ground. Li Enping cried out in pain and supported himself on the ground with both hands. The changes in his body had reached the final stage. The energy brought by swallowing Kano continued to strengthen and repair his body. He felt more and more painful, and his physical fitness was improving comprehensively. Strength 4.2, 4.3, 4.5, 5.0, 5.8. Speed 3.2, 3.5, 4.0, 4.7. And the physical fitness, which was already the highest, was greatly improved again, 4.6, 5.2, 6.0, 6.5. Finally stopped, Li Enping's physical fitness also became strength 5.8, speed 4.7, physical fitness 6.5, far exceeding the human body limit. After all, every 0.1 increase in these values is several times the power of the previous 0.1, and the higher it is, the harder it is to improve. Now he is afraid that he can beat the previous Kano into powder with one punch. What's going on? Jennifer looked at Li Enping, who was kneeling on the ground, in surprise, with the pupils in her eyes constantly turning. His body temperature is rising. Is Kano attacking him? No, Lei Jiao muttered to himself, I can no longer feel Kano's spirit. Something. Although Fang Qi's eyes were injured, he still felt that something in front of him was becoming more and more dangerous as Li Enping's body continued to evolve, and even made him, who had countless combat experience, stand on end. In front of the desk, Han Wei looked at Li Enping on the screen, frowning more and more. His original plan to deal with the three major organizations was disrupted by Kano. And Li Enping, who appeared later, showed amazing combat power. As an intruder, Li Enping might be SpecialAbilities' subordinate. But no one gave him any written notice, and his sudden appearance here was really difficult for him to deal with. He was wondering if he should just delay it and let Li Enping go by himself. But he was afraid that the people above would blame him in the end and think that he was incompetent. After thinking for a while, he looked up, picked up the phone, and dialed a series of phone numbers. Password SCFA7430. The password is DXLQFC4923. I request to use the satellite. Then he turned off the phone and started to operate the computer in front of him. Under Han Wei's skilled operation, the interface kept changing, and finally a satellite map of Emerald City appeared. Then he kept dragging and zooming in, and the map on the screen became clearer and clearer. After more than 10 seconds, a figure appeared in front of Han Wei. Although the image was a little blurry, from the background and the approximate size of the person, it can be determined that he is Li Enping. Looking at the image in front of him, Han Wei showed a smile at the corner of his mouth. Li Enping in the field naturally didn't know that he had been locked by the satellite. He was adapting to his earth-shaking body. Strength 5.8, speed 4.7, physical fitness 6.5. Li Enping stood up, and his skin, which had turned red due to the rapid increase in the high temperature in his body, had returned to its original state. Why can I feel my own strength, speed, and physical fitness? This is also part of evolution. From now on, you can accurately sense your physical condition. Not only that, you have gained a little evolutionary ability. From now on, your body's adaptability will be stronger. The speed of numerical growth will also be faster than before. But this is not your ability after all. The ability to evolve has reached its limit. Evolutionary ability. Li Enping's eyes flashed with a cold light. What do you mean by him and his so-called evolutionary ability? Dead silence. He did not answer Li Anping's question. He didn't even say anything. Until Li Anping thought that He had disappeared, he spoke again. My kind, my brother, my sibling. We have different abilities, but we are equally powerful. There seemed to be a mockery in He's voice. He continued, humans are a race far superior to yours. When Kano is killed, they will also feel my presence. In order to delay the time for them to find you, from now on, I will take the initiative to fall into a deep sleep. And you, try your best to hunt and become stronger. If you eat enough people, maybe you will have a chance to escape when you meet them in the future. Hey! Where are you? Talk, then. No matter how Li Anping asked him, He no longer responded, as if he really fell into a deep sleep. Footsteps sounded all around. Li Anping glanced around and found that some policemen were slowly surrounding him. Although they were far away and all hid in the corridors and ruins, their heartbeats, breathing and smell alone could not be hidden from Li Anping. His five senses are now more powerful than before. The police only felt a flash in front of their eyes, and Li Anping had disappeared. They immediately hid themselves, but the expected blow did not follow. They immediately started searching, but could not find Li Anping anymore. Han Wei in the office stared at the screen in front of him. Li Anping's figure was displayed on it. But he disappeared in the next second, but soon a similar target was found through computer search. The camera turned to an office building hundreds of meters away, and then the figure flashed again, and the camera moved frantically, and finally found the target again on the rooftop of a residential building. However, Li Anping still had no intention of stopping. He kept jumping and running, and every time he appeared on the screen again, he had crossed dozens or even hundreds of meters. Han Wei's eyes showed deep fear. Finally, Li Anping stopped and went into an abandoned factory where no one lived. Han Wei also exhaled deeply and grabbed the phone beside him. But at this moment, a hand pressed on his shoulder. He was startled and stood up suddenly, but found that his body weighed 1,000 pounds and he could not move. He tried to turn his head to see who was behind him, but he could only get a rough glimpse from the corner of his eye. You are Xia. The voice stopped abruptly. Han Wei had fainted on the ground. In the same second, within 300 meters of Han Wei's location, including all the police, special forces, Fang Qi, Lei Xiao, Jennifer, and even Dong Man, all the living people within the range lost consciousness in an instant. They stood there blankly with confused eyes until a minute later, when they came back to their senses. But by that time, some memories about Kano and Li Anping will disappear from their minds, replaced by the memory of the three major forces fighting and the Kirin group's great victory. The figure behind Han Wei hummed a song, leisurely operated the computer in front of him, skillfully deleted some of the data, and then called up Li Anping's location. After showing a satisfied smile, he disconnected the satellite connection. Finally, it turned into a series of bubbles and dissipated with the wind. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiang Go. Chapter 62. It was quiet inside the abandoned factory late at night, which was completely opposite to the bright and lively lights in the distance. But in this deserted place with no one around, a man was standing upside down in the factory. The man only wore a pair of trousers, and his exposed upper body was covered with lean and strong muscles. He pointed his index finger on the ground to do a handstand, and his body was rising and falling with the bending of his arms. If this scene were seen by ordinary citizens, they would be amazed by the man's strength and the strength of his fingers. But in the view of Li Anping, who is exercising, it is not even a warm-up. After completing 1,001 finger handstands, Li Anping stood up again, but focused his gaze on a shadow. What are you? There was deep doubt in his tone. This is normal. Anyone who faces a person who looks like a human but has no breathing, no heartbeat, and no breath of life will be confused and even afraid. The humanoid figure stepped out from the shadows. He looked like a man, wearing the blue and white uniform of the Special Forces, the Daxia dragon bird. The five-pointed star on his shoulder shows that he holds a high position. The man's face is very pale, his hair is short, he has no eyebrows, and there are no wrinkles on his face, making it hard to tell how old he is. But the way Li Anping looked at the man, he seemed to be able to see endless vicissitudes of life, including countless life and death, love and hatred. This is a man who has had countless experiences. But Li Anping couldn't feel any breath of life on his body, no breathing, no heartbeat, not even the sound of blood flowing, muscles, bones moving, or feet touching the ground. The man looked like a human, but he didn't have any human characteristics, so Li Anping just asked him what he was and not who he was. "You can call me SpecialAbilities, I am one of the top leaders of Daxia Longke," the man said silently. Li Anping was startled. He looked around, observed his surroundings, and settled down to listen to the sounds nearby. But except for the sound of the night wind blowing through the factory door, he heard nothing. "Don't be nervous, I'm the only one here to see you today." SpecialAbilities raised his finger and pointed at Li Anping from the distance. "Let me show you something." Originally, his finger was intended to directly transmit a piece of information to Li Anping. Who would have thought that as soon as his thoughts touched Li Anping's brain, he felt a bloody wind coming towards his face. Countless dead people wailed in front of him, and hundreds of scenes of death reappeared repeatedly in his mind. Kano, Shang Zhenbang, Shang Angguo, and many other villains killed by Li Anping. In Li Anping's mind, it was like a hell of the dead, with nothing but killing and death. And he is a person who went to hell by mistake. SpecialAbilities couldn't help but take a step back and looked at Li Anping in surprise. "What are you doing?" Li Anping looked at the other party with confusion. In his feeling just now, the other party just stretched out his hand and pointed at him, but did nothing. "I just wanted to tell you something through my brain." SpecialAbilities shrugged, "but it seems that your brain is not very friendly." After saying that, he looked at Li Anping in surprise. "To put it simply, I hope you can join Daxia Longke." He raised his hand to stop Li Anping from answering. "Don't refuse in a hurry. I have been paying attention to you since Zhongdu City. I know you are doing it." "What? I know that so far, you have mainly killed some criminals, villains, and scum. But do you think this is useful?" SpecialAbilities sighed and said, "You kill a few bad guys every day, which is indeed very satisfying. But it will not help. Instead, it will only cause social unrest, and even those who died will be in vain. The position will be more confusing for the remaining people. Then do nothing? Have you ever seen the fate of those innocent people, those who were bullied?" Li Anping sneered. "I'm sorry about the Zhongdu matter and your matter, but even if you don't take action, Shang Angguo won't be active for long. He has already been on our blacklist. And the riots you caused in Zhongdu are directly or indirectly, many innocent people were harmed." SpecialAbilities said without giving in, "Managing a country is never a simple matter, and we cannot do it rudely. I admit that we have made mistakes, but reckless behavior like you will only make this country worse. You are compromising. Only with blood can those scum teach them what is wrong." Li Anping completely disagreed with what SpecialAbilities said. "The best way is to kill them all. People like Kano, if you let an organization like Lone Wolf go, it will only make them more aggressive. What happened in Emerald City today is all caused by your weakness." "Emerald City?" SpecialAbilities said calmly, "This city is not the only one in Daxia. To be honest, it was only after I came here that I discovered that the situation in Emerald City is worse than I imagined. But there is no way. In recent years, Ice Castle has become stronger and stronger, and has been sending troops to our border. More than 70% of the army, Daxia Longke, is concentrated on the northern border, and it is here to confront Ice Castle. Each of the three major organizations has strong power. If they are forced to do so, it will easily cause the situation to deteriorate into a big mess. Therefore, What happens in Emerald City affects the whole body and is related to the situation in the entire southern Xinjiang. Once we take action here, resulting in insufficient strength in northern Xinjiang and even erosion of the northern front, Ice Castle's army will take advantage of the situation and go south, spreading the war to the entire territory of Daxia. That is the real disaster. In contrast, matters in Emerald City can only be delayed again and again. Seeing Li Anping frowning and thinking, Xiaolikan continued, "That's why we need your power. If more strong people like you join, Daxia's power will be stronger, and it will be able to better control everything in the country. In such a place, with the support of strong force, the law will be strictly enforced, and the black forces will lose the breeding ground. Then bastards like Kano or Shang Zhenbang will no longer be able to do evil. Isn't this much more effective than killing some people directly?" Xiaolikan said a lot, but saw Li Anping had no reaction. I couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. At this moment, Li Anping said, "I will go to Tianjing, and I will also go to Daxia Longke, but not now. There are still many damn people in the city who are not dead." Seeing Li Anping's stubborn look, Xiaolikan frowned and said, "You don't have to join the great Xiaolongke, but at least go to Tianjing and have a look. It will definitely change your mind." Li Anping shook his head and walked back. Since Xiaolikan had discovered this place, he planned to leave here and find another place to rest. Don't take action against the Zhongai Hall and the Kailan group, especially the Zhongai Hall. They have too many grassroots personnel. Once trouble breaks out, the entire Emerald City will be in chaos. There is also the Kailan group. Their relationship with the Bai royal family also needs us. Check again. Seeing that Li Anping didn't answer and turned around to leave, Xiaolikan's figure flashed like a breeze, floating in front of Li Anping and blocking him. Li Anping looked at Xiaolikan, who was standing in front of him, and his tone became cold. "You want to catch me?" Xiaolikan smiled and said, "I have seen you take action many times. Your physical strength is very strong, but you have almost no control over the mental energy. You just follow your instinct. And the amount of mental energy is only at the first level. It's okay when you meet ordinary ability users, but once you meet a real master, these will be your Achilles heel. Things like the flesh are too easy to be restrained. The reason humans are strong is because we use tools." Halfway through Xiaolikan's words, he found that Li Anping had already walked away from him, as if he hadn't heard what he said at all. He frowned and stopped in front of him again and said, "Don't think that you are fearless just because you have defeated a few minions. There are too many abilities in this world to count, and there are also many kinds of weapons for killing people. Not to mention anything else, cloud bombs and high-energy lasers are not something you can resist with your body alone. I have seen many people with mutant abilities like you who are blindly confident in their own bodies. To be honest, you guys are the first to die on the battlefield. So don't you want to learn to read Qi? Only the ability of the Esper himself, coupled with the use of Nian Qi, can he be truly powerful. Even against modern armies. Daxia Longke has the most advanced training system in the world. There you can understand the essence of your own abilities and the techniques for using various thoughts." Xiaolikan said a lot in one breath, but Li Anping didn't even stop, making everything he said was in vain. Looking at Li Anping's leaving figure, Xiaolikan burst into laughter and murmured to himself, "I never thought I would beg people to join me." After speaking, he waved his hand and the entire factory changed instantly. All the doors and windows disappeared, sealing Li Anping and him inside like a box. Seeing Li Anping finally turned around, Xiaolikan explained, "This is my ability. Speaking of which, many people know that my ability is the 8 dragons and 8 phases, the 8 powers of wind, rain, thunder, and lightning, and the 8 powers of life and death. In front of your eyes, in fact, it is just my clone, Phantom Dragon. It has about 1/8 of my power. What you see now is just an illusion. Even the essence of my body is just an illusion. Having said this, SpecialAbilities also breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't know why his consciousness bounced back when he put his consciousness directly into the other person's brain. He thought that the illusion was of no use to Li Anping. Unexpectedly, the visual illusion is still effective for Li Anping. Thinking of this, he smiled confidently and said to Li Anping, "Let's make a bet. Within 24 hours, as long as you can escape this space created by my illusion, you must agree to join Daxia Dragon Bird." Li Anping finally understood why there was no sign of life on the other party's body. It turns out to be a clone of an ability. He looked up at the surrounding space and found that it seemed to be about the same size as the original factory, except that the windows and doors disappeared, leaving only black and white walls around. Then what if you lose? Huh? A surprised expression appeared on SpecialAbilities' face, and then he smiled and said, "Boy, if you win, you can make any requests to me." Okay. Before SpecialAbilities could even react, his ears were filled with the howling wind. But Li Anping had disappeared from his eyes, and there was even a faint after-image left on his retina. Then a fist hit his head, slowly enlarging his eyes until it filled his entire sight. SpecialAbilities couldn't even react at all. It wasn't that he had no time to react, and it wasn't that he was too frightened to react. But Li Anping's speed was too fast, even faster than his brain could receive the news of Li Anping's punch. At this moment, he didn't even know that Li Anping had appeared in front of him. He didn't really react until a fist hit his head from top to bottom, and huge force exploded on his forehead. Boom! The cage of illusion was shattered by the infinite power in the first second. Immediately afterwards, the shock wave generated by the scattered wind of the fist blew all the debris in the factory into the air. Under the huge impact, the cement floor under SpecialAbilities' feet was shaken into countless pieces and exploded into a large pit, filled with countless stones. Mud was flying everywhere, and the whole earth seemed to be shaking. Amidst the billowing smoke and dust, the factory building made a series of cracking sounds, and cracks climbed up the wall. Then there was a loud bang, and a wave of air spurted out, and the entire factory building collapsed in ruins. If I hadn't used an illusion to appear in front of him beforehand, and his punch hadn't really touched me, this clone would have collapsed. SpecialAbilities in the distance watched all this silently. Unconsciously, he had lost his human form and turned into a small white dragon 2 or 3 meters long floating in the air. This is the Phantom Dragon, the original form of his clone. Stimulated by the huge threat, he subconsciously restored his strongest form at the moment. But even so, he didn't have the slightest confidence that he could receive Li Anping's punch just now in this posture. At least 4 dragons need to be possessed by the main body before he can receive this punch with complete confidence. At this moment, Li Anping walked out of the billowing smoke. When he saw SpecialAbilities' appearance, he showed surprise. However, he didn't ask any more questions and just said to SpecialAbilities, "I want you to cooperate with me in cleaning up the Emerald City. After this place is clean enough, I will go to Tianjing to have a look. Of course, if you don't agree, I will do it myself." Without giving SpecialAbilities a chance to say a few more words, Li Anping jumped hard and disappeared into the vast night. SpecialAbilities was left alone looking at the ruins in front of him with a wry smile. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, SpecialAbilities. Chapter 63. The next day, in an alley in the slums of Emerald City, Li Anping was sitting in front of a snack shop, feasting on a few steamed buns and a bowl of tofu. Every big city has ghettos, and the Emerald City is no exception. Li Anping didn't want to see all the feasting, indulgence and lust. So he chose to rest here last night. But even so, in just one night, he still killed a robber and a rapist who had robbed someone else's bag. Evil is everywhere in the world. If I keep doing this, Will it really have any effect? Li Anping couldn't help but think of some of SpecialAbilities' words yesterday. While he was thinking, a large shadow suddenly covered him. He looked up and saw a woman with a curvy figure, a plump bust, and a beautiful face standing in front of him. The woman was wearing a black uniform with a skirt and black stockings. It is more suitable to be a white-collar worker in an office building, instead of standing in front of a snack shop in the ghetto like now. Li Anping finished the remaining buns in several bites, stood up, and stepped away from the woman. The woman smiled slightly and stood in front of him again. Li Anping frowned slightly and said, "What do you mean?" "Hello, my name is Li Qian." The woman smiled and stretched out her hand. "General Xia asked me to cooperate with you and support your work in Emerald City. I came here specially to see you." For some reason, Li Anping always felt that the woman in front of him seemed familiar. He asked doubtfully, "Did SpecialAbilities tell you who I am?" Of course. Li Qian laughed. Her originally charming face became even more charming after her smile. "Li Anping, you have forgotten who I am, but I have always remembered you." Li Qian pointed to the black car parked at the entrance of the alley and said, "Let's talk while walking. I have a lot to say to you." Woolen cloth. Li Anping didn't ask any more questions and followed Li Qian into the car. The car swayed and passed through the traffic, and within a few minutes it was on the elevated highway. "To be honest, I've wanted to know you for a long time." Li Qian looked at Li Anping excitedly and said, "Originally, I was not responsible for this matter, but after I found out, I immediately told General Xia that I must come and help." "Your favor?" Li Anping said coldly, "I don't need your help. I know your concerns, but please believe me, I am helping you wholeheartedly." Li Qian said anxiously, "Have you forgotten? It was you who saved me at the volcano bar in Zhongdu." After some narration, it turned out that Li Qian was bullied by Shang Zhenbang at the volcano bar and was almost humiliated. Later, Li Anping chased Shang Zhenbang and indirectly saved Li Qian. "So it's you." Li Anping remembered, but the difference between the way he dressed at the volcano bar and now was so different that he couldn't remember it before. However, the other person's vixen-like face left an impression on him. "I'm here to repay you," Li Qian said. "Also, General Xia also wants to accept you into the Great Xia. He has no ill intentions towards you." Seeing Li Anping's unmoved look, Li Qian said anxiously, "What do you have to do to believe me?" "Just commit suicide." "If you commit suicide, I will believe you," Li Anping said casually. He would not just trust the government casually, especially people from an organization like Xia. Unexpectedly, when Li Qian heard what he said, her face turned pale, but she actually pulled out a small pistol from her waist, opened the safety and handed it to Li Anping. "As long as you think it's meaningful to you, then just kill me." Li Qian put the pistol in Li Anping's hand and said, "You saved my life, take it away if you want." Li Anping gave her a cold look, then suddenly picked up the pistol and pointed it at Li Qian's temple. The cold barrel of the gun was leaning against the side of Li Qian's face, and Li Anping stared closely at Li Qian's expression. But he didn't see a trace of panic. The other person continued to drive as before, as if what was pointed at her was not a gun but a wooden stick. "Do you really think I can't shoot? I'm not afraid of SpecialAbilities. My life has been ruined a long time ago. If I die in your hands, it will be a good ending." After Li Qian said this, she looked at Li Anping lightly. "Madman." Li Anping frowned. When Li Qian spoke just now, there was no change in either his heart or muscles. The other person seemed to have a strange emotion towards him. Could it be that after accidentally saving this Li Qian once, she became a nymphomaniac? Li Anping felt a little weird. He stuffed the pistol back into Li Qian's holster and said, "I don't have to kill you. Why don't I ask you a few questions? Are you an ability user? Although I didn't feel your mental energy, SpecialAbilities accepted you into the Great Xia Dragon Bird probably because you awakened your abilities." Li Qian was stunned and replied, "Well, yes. Then tell me your abilities. If you tell me, I can consider trusting you. Okay, I understand. Contrary to Li Anping's expectation, Li Qian agreed without any hesitation. Just as Li Anping frowned and thought about what the other party was thinking, Li Qian told him a fact that surprised him. My ability, on the surface, is to manipulate paper. I can make the paper move around the body according to my own thoughts. General Xia knows this. But in fact, my real ability is more than this. Li Qian paused. Accelerating the car continuously and driving on the elevated highway at a speed of more than 150 yards. The strong wind hit the car body and made a huge noise. Covered up many sounds. To prevent someone from eavesdropping, when Li Anping was thinking this, Li Qian's voice came to his ears again. My real ability. As long as the person I have interviewed, what he does in the next 30 days will appear in the newspaper in my hand as text information. If it is true, this ability is very strong, no, very strong. Just as Li Anping was thinking this, Li Qian continued. In addition, if I discard these 30 days of reports, I can directly see from the newspaper what this person plans to do the next day. Of course, these 30 days of reports and the reports of the second day can be continued after the interview. It exists and can be used when needed, but only one report can be saved per interview. After saying that, she looked at Li Anping with a proud face and said, how about it, my ability will be very useful to you. I haven't told anyone about this ability. Until now, only you and I know about it. Even General Xia also. You thought my ability was very weak, so you let me come here to contact you. Otherwise, I would have been sent to fight in the north. But she found Li Anping looking at her in shock. What's wrong? Looking at me like this? Is this woman an idiot? Li Anping looked at Li Qian in shock, and thought in his mind, you actually told me this ability so straightforwardly. No, is it a trap? Li Anping asked, what is the specific definition of the so-called interview? First you need to know the other party's name and identity. Then you have to ask questions. After asking, the person being interviewed must answer truthfully. After he finishes answering, the interview is established, and the interview must be completed within 10 minutes. Ordinary people only need to ask one question, but those with more abilities need more. Level 1 requires 2 questions, Level 2 requires 3 questions, Level 3 requires 4 questions, and Level 4 requires 5 questions. Level 5 is more troublesome and requires 10 questions. Li Anping then asked, does it have to be face-to-face? No need. Li Qian shook her head, as long as there is a conversation, it will be fine. Phone, communicator, or voice over the internet will do. Powerful ability. Although the so-called interview has special restrictions, this ability is still very strong. Moreover, she can't feel Nian Qi in her body now. Is she still a level 0 ability user? After the ability is upgraded, this ability will probably be stronger. Seeing Li Anping's silent look, Li Qian said nervously, are you doubting me? I didn't lie to you. If you don't believe me, I can use my ability in front of you. No, I don't doubt your words. Li Anping shook his head and said sincerely to Li Qian, you can't tell such a lie that can be exposed immediately. So I believe you. Really, Li Qian said happily, only you know this ability. I'm afraid that if someone in Daxia senior management knows about my ability, I will be in danger. So I will only let you use it, and I will trust you. It's not really an idiot. If the top government officials know about his ability, I'm afraid she will have no freedom from now on. Li Anping looked at the other party's happy look, but he became more and more confused. But she told me directly like this, is it really because I saved her? Is this silly woman really trustworthy? A week has passed since Li Anping killed Kano. The entire Emerald City was in a strange calm, and no one was fighting among the 3 major forces this week. But the name of Fang Qi, the leader of the Kailan regiment, once again caused a stir in the entire Emerald City in just a few days. All because of the big battle last week. Under SpecialAbilities memory modification, everything was different. The fact that everyone knows so far is that Zhongai Tang teamed up with Zi Luolan and Lone Wolf to snipe Fang Qi. As a result, Fang Qi defeated them one by one with one person, defeated the 4 heavenly kings of Zhongai Hall and Lu Jun, the boss of Zhongai Hall, and killed all 5 of them. And not only Zhongai Tang, but also Zilalan's reformer couldn't do anything to him, and was destroyed by him. The Lone Wolf was also completely wiped out by Fang Qi and Lei Xiao, but the Kylin group also lost a long-haired female ability user in this battle. Finally, under pressure from the Emerald City SWAT team, they had to retreat. The whole matter was concealed by SpecialAbilities, and no one knew about the existence of Kano and Li Anping. So Fang Qi's achievement caused a sensation all of a sudden. The title that was already considered the #1 expert in Emerald City was completely confirmed. For a time, Zhongai Tang and Zi Luolan fully reduced their forces to guard against the Kylin regiment's offensive. The minds of the entire Emerald City changed, and countless people made various preparations for Fang Qi's possible next actions. But a week has passed, and there has been no news from the Kylin group. At this time, in a villa on the southern outskirts of Emerald City, scantily clad men and women were walking around the swimming pool. The music was playing loudly, creating a scene of carnival. The girls among them all have devilish figures and behave slutty. The men are all fat and thick, and many even have scars on their bodies. And even during the carnival, most of them still maintained basic vigilance, and would look around warily from time to time, obviously not 100% devoted to the carnival. Several of the big men were lying on the deck chairs by the swimming pool and said, "Haha, the boss destroyed Zhongai Hall this time. This Emerald City will be ours from now on." Another scarred man next to him pulled a passing woman into his arms and said while touching her, "Isn't there a violet? That Jennifer looks like an iceberg goddess. I can't wait to see how the boss hums her to death." That's right, when the Violet and Loyalty Halls collapse, the Emerald City will be our Kylin Regiment's world. Similar conversations or imaginings can be seen everywhere in the villa. But unlike the carnival in the villa, the study on the second floor was quiet. Good sound insulation blocks all the music and voices downstairs. Fang Qi was sitting behind the desk in the study. A week has passed since the battle with Zhongai Tang, and his injured eye has finally healed. This is all due to the powerful self-healing ability brought by Kylin blood. If it were an ordinary person, these eyes would probably be blind. But this time, Fang Qi, who knew that he had killed many masters of the Zhongai Hall and surpassed them in skill, was already very ambitious. If it weren't for his eye injury, he would have already come to kill all the remaining people in the Zhongai Hall. It's a surrender. Looking at the 3 men in front of him, Fang Qi showed a satisfied smile on his face. These are his current capable men in the Kylin regiment, and all 3 of them are outstanding ability users. Seeing Fang Qi looking at him, one of the 3 people stood up. He was a middle-aged man with bulging muscles under his green combat uniform. He wears an eye patch over his left eye and a deep and long scar at the corner of his mouth, which makes his whole face look very scary. The first impression he gives is that he is not a good person. His name is Giant Bear, he is impulsive and cruel. He joined a mercenary group since he was a child and participated in various wars. A veteran figure belonging to the Kylin regiment, Fang Qi has always been highly valued and entrusted with important tasks since Fang Qi took over as the leader. "Captain, the Loyalty Hall is torn apart in front of you. There are only a few cyborgs left in Violet, so there is nothing to worry about. And Commander, your injuries have also recovered. It's time for us to show off our grand ambitions. Tonight, I will take the little one with me. Let's rush in and completely destroy Zhongai Hall first." "I don't agree." Lei Jiao also stood up and said to Fang Qi, "Zhongai Hall and Zilalan are indeed not our opponents now. But no matter what, Zhongai Hall has been in Emerald City for more than 20 years and has a deep foundation. The number is ours. Hundreds of times. Violet is a large international group and may send large troops to support at any time. And don't forget that this is the Emerald City of Daxia, and the special service team will not treat us as our unification of the Emerald City. Last week, they were the ones who forced me and the group leader to leave at the last moment. Humph, Lei Xiao, I think you are just cowardly. If you are afraid of death, you can just hide here by yourself. You don't have to follow me. The giant bear looked at Lei Xiao with disdain. The two had a long-standing conflict. They were sworn enemies in the Kailan regiment before Fang Qi took over as the regiment leader. The giant bear has a rough personality. When he saw the Thunder Dragon rising up to speak and refuting himself, he couldn't help but quarreled with the Thunder Dragon. Seeing the two of them arguing endlessly, Fang Qi frowned and shouted, "That's enough, why are you arguing?" As soon as they heard Fang Qi speak, the two of them immediately became stunned. Originally, Fang Qi relied on his strong strength to always speak his mind after taking over as the leader, but the record of this battle against Zhongai Hall convinced Zhu Xiong and others. The cohesion of the entire Kailan group has also reached an unprecedented peak. Fang Qi turned to look at the other person among the three and said, "Hedgehog, what's the latest news?" The man called Hedgehog is a thin man with long hair that reaches past his shoulders. Wearing a suit, he looked more like a playboy from upper-class society than a mercenary. He has been silent since entering the study. Until this moment when Fang Qi called him by name, he stood up and said, "Jennifer of Violet has not done anything big." On the other hand, at Zhongai Hall, Lu Jun's uncle Lucien contacted a group of elders who had retired and reorganized Zhongai Hall. The forces of the Tang dynasty have integrated. Their banner is to seek revenge on us. Haha, this Lucien was suppressed by Lu Jun all his life and was forced to retire. Now his nephew died and he ran out to take revenge. It's nothing to worry about. As a clown, Fang Qi raised the corner of his mouth. What about the special service team? When he heard about the special service team, the hedgehog couldn't help but frowned and said hesitantly, "Recently, the government seems to have been changing people, especially the special service team. Many of our acquaintances are missing. I don't understand either. What's going on? What about Han Wei? Is he still responsible?" Fang Qi asked the question he was most concerned about. In his opinion, Zhongai Tang and Zi Lulan are no longer a concern. Only facing Han Wei, the top person in charge of the special service team in Emerald City, is the biggest threat to him at present. Han Wei was transferred. The hedgehog's tone was a little uncertain. Daxia Longke sent a girl whom I had never heard of to take charge of the Emerald City branch. Girl? Fang Qi asked, "Are you right?" "It's a girl, she seems to be under 25 years old. Her name is Li Qian." After saying this, the hedgehog couldn't help laughing. "She also sent us an email, asking us all to do some serious work. He can help us find a job. We'll get 5 insurances and 1 housing fund." Having said this, the hedgehog couldn't help laughing again, and even the Thunder Dragon and Giant Bear beside him couldn't help laughing. "Is this new guy an idiot? Ha 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 ha, I think she is too naive." Fang Qi shook his head, "That's just right. Since Daxia Longke sent an ignorant girl over, we can teach her a lesson. But don't forget, we came all the way from Bio to Daxia to do yet." Hearing this, the other 3 people all showed a hint of a smile. Fang Qi ordered, "Lei Xiao, ask Lucien to bring someone to see me. If he refuses, it doesn't matter if you scare him appropriately. Hedgehog, go and investigate whether Han Wei is really gone, don't let them trick you. Giant Bear, come with me to meet our new leader in Emerald City." Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 64. On the ring highway of Emerald City, a black car was driving at high speed. The red letters on the license plate showed the military identity of the car. The people in the surrounding cars couldn't help but show a trace of awe in their eyes. Because of the long-term battle with the Ice Castle in the north, the Daxia army now has a much higher social status in the country than before, and the weight of their words is also heavier than before. In particular, the temperament and bravery brought by the army's long-term battles have made the Daxia army always strong and elite in the impression of ordinary people. Li Anping was sitting in the co-pilot seat at this time, looking at the scenery outside the car window with his eyes, not knowing what he was thinking. Li Qian sat on his right and drove the car. Seeing Li Anping's careless look, he couldn't help but say, "It's better not to make this operation too bloody. I know they all deserve to die, but that will have a bad impact." Li Anping didn't answer. It had been a week since they last met. During this week, SpecialAbilities had already left. Hearing that the Northern Front was in danger, he went back to support. And Li Anping communicated with SpecialAbilities through Li Qian and reached many conditions. SpecialAbilities did not simply ask Li Qian to help Li Anping clean up the criminals. Instead, he took another approach. Have all the people in the special service team been cleaned up? Li Anping came back to his senses and turned to Li Qian and asked. Yes, Li Qian nodded. According to the information you provided and the evidence we have, all the people in the team who have colluded with the underworld and lone wolves have been sent away. Including Han Wei. I used the opportunity of interrogation to interview him in advance, and you may never find him again. And now I am the boss of the Jade branch of the special service team. Are you happy? As she said, she took out a small stack of newspapers from her arms and handed it to Li Anping. And during this week, Li Anping also confirmed another thing, that is, Li Qian likes him. I don't know if it was stimulated by something, or disguised, or for some other reason. Li Qian showed her obsession with him, as if she worshipped an idol and could do anything for him. But Li Anping still needs more tests, because this kind of thing is too incredible for him. Li Anping took the newspaper and started reading. There were not many words on the newspaper, only a few lines, and the rest were blank. On the first day, Han Wei was covered with his head and taken to the train. Although he knew that all his crimes had been found out, he was full of despair and sadness, but he still did not have the courage to intervene and resist the government. He did not sleep all night, worrying about his future. On the second day, Han Wei was sent to the hospital and felt that his brain was getting duller and duller. He knew that he was fed with medicine, but he did not know when. Yesterday's breakfast, or dinner, it doesn't matter. This is the routine process of Daxia Longke. The convicted ability person will be fed with poison in a few days. He will be rescued and become an idiot to prevent him from telling secrets that he should not tell. On the third day, Han Wei felt that the whole world became upside down and his memory began to become fragmented. Li Anping read a few more lines and found that Han Wei had gone crazy in the end. The rest of the newspaper was all written with all kinds of crazy words, so he tore the newspaper into pieces and spilled it out of the window. It's nothing. If SpecialAbilities hadn't put pressure on us from the top, we wouldn't have been able to catch them even if we had more evidence. In the end, I had to kill them myself. And compared to going crazy, maybe they would be more accepting of being killed by me. Li Qian continued, the Emerald City Special Service Team is missing half of its staff all of a sudden. There will be a vacuum period next. You have to support me well and don't just leave. Seeing that Li Anping didn't mean to answer, Li Qian didn't care. He had gotten used to Li Anping's state in the past week. The other party rarely spoke, and most of the time she was talking and Li Anping was listening. But this feeling with Li Anping made her feel very comfortable. Originally, because of the murder case, SpecialAbilities took her into the Great Xia Dragon Bird. She thought her life was already dark, but she didn't expect to meet Li Anping again now. Li Qian secretly glanced at Li Anping staring at the window, and the corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl up. Also, remember, call us quickly after you kill someone, don't always forget. For example, why did you tear the man in half yesterday? You could just stab him to death with one finger. Do you know how bad the impact will be if he is discovered by civilians? He deserves to die, Li Anping said coldly. He dismembered his own daughter, and it's easy for him to tear this kind of person in half. Li Qian sighed helplessly, and had to urge, then you have to remember to call us and let us deal with it quickly. The scene is too bloody and will cause a bad impact. By then, you will be wrong even if you are right. I know, Li Anping said indifferently, and then he suddenly turned his head to look at Li Qian and asked, aren't you afraid of me when you see these things every day? No, don't you kill bad people, Li Qian smiled at Li Anping. I saved me, I believe you. Li Anping's eyes moved, but he didn't say anything after all, and lowered his head to look at the documents in his hand. This is the goal of their operation this time. This is also the condition discussed by SpecialAbilities and Li Anping. Li Anping stopped attacking the state forces in Emerald City. But he could bring down those officials and police with evidence. As long as the evidence was conclusive, SpecialAbilities promised not to follow the normal process and directly let the special forces handle it. Li Anping will get support from the special forces, which will provide him with information and whereabouts of various criminals. But in turn, Li Anping must also provide military assistance when the special forces are insufficient. There is one last point, that is, there is no absolute need, don't take action against the three major forces first, because that may cause turmoil in the entire Emerald City. After all, there are 100,000 younger brothers behind Zhongai Hall, and Violet is an international group with investments throughout Daxia. And the leader of the Kylan group, Fang Qi, has the ability of Kylan blood, and is suspected to be related to the Bai royal family. At this sensitive moment, SpecialAbilities does not want any variables that affect the international situation in Emerald City. Simply put, these three major forces have backgrounds that make SpecialAbilities temporarily cautious. But this is what Li Anping disdains. He plans to use the power of Daxia Dragon Bird to clean up Emerald City first. As for the last three organizations, if he finds out that they deserve to die like Lone Wolf, he will not care about the overall situation. Kill if you should kill, and destroy if you should destroy. Today, Li Qian sent Li Anping to a large drug manufacturing den. The raw materials were transported from the Indo-Western country in the south, and then manufactured in Daxia. This large den itself has super strong military equipment, and it had an unclear relationship with the special forces of Emerald City in the past. Now the special forces have been cleared from top to bottom, and it is time to wipe out this den. However, the special forces are currently short of manpower, and the firepower of this drug manufacturing den is very strong. In order to reduce casualties, it is time for Li Anping to go out. As time passed, the car came down from an exit and drove more than 10 kilometers. Unknowingly, it was getting more and more remote. There were no people and traffic around, just like entering a place isolated from the world. The road under the wheels also changed from concrete to dirt. After a bumpy ride, Li Qian parked the car on a muddy and rugged path. She pointed to the woods on the side and said, just go another 500 meters this way, the vanguard should have arrived. Li Anping nodded to show that he understood, opened the car door and walked into the woods. Behind him, Li Qian was walking with a briefcase. Not long after walking, Li Anping saw a 3-story villa in the woods. The whole villa was surrounded by a 3-meter-high concrete wall, which was covered with glass and iron wire. The main door was a solid iron door, and you couldn't see inside at all. Li Anping could still hear the barking of dogs inside. It was like a small bunker. When Li Anping was about to move forward, 2 men in blue and white uniforms and fully armed suddenly rushed out and pointed machine guns at him, shouting, "Who are you? There is a military exercise here, get out of here." Before they finished speaking, they shouted behind Li Anping, "Captain." Li Qian walked out from behind Li Anping and said with a smile, "Okay, Qin Yang. You let the brothers back off and leave it to him." Qin Yang looked at Li Anping suspiciously. Although he was full of distrust in his heart, the relationship between superiors and subordinates forced him to obey and led his men back into the woods. Li Anping had already noticed that there were 20 fully armed soldiers in the woods, vaguely surrounding the villa. But when he saw Qin Yang and his uniform, he frowned. Why did you let ordinary people join in? Not enough manpower. Anyway, I let them come with your support this time, and it can be regarded as training. Li Qian explained. This Qin Yang has a sense of justice. He dared to break into the lair of the lone wolf alone. Didn't you save him? I thought you admired him very much. Li Anping did not answer. He glanced at Li Qian and walked straight to the gate of the villa. Haha, you obviously care about others but don't want to say it. Li Qian looked at Li Anping's silent appearance and laughed in her heart. I didn't expect Anping to have such a side. The 20 people in the woods were shocked to see Li Anping walk up so openly without even a gun or a bulletproof vest. Is this guy looking for death? Why did the captain let such a man go straight up? Boss, should we go up and drag him back? Qin Yang shook his head and looked at Li Anping in confusion. Just watch, I don't think the captain will let him go to die. Li Anping also heard their conversation, but he didn't care at all. When he slowly approached the iron gate for 5 meters, he found that someone on the other side had discovered him, so he suddenly accelerated and rushed to the front of the iron gate in the blink of an eye. Then he punched the iron gate. Bang! The turbulent airflow rushed towards him like a wave. Li Anping's violent punch was like a bomb explosion. The thick iron gate weighing several tons collapsed in the first time and shot towards the back of the gate. The criminals behind the door were pierced by countless iron blocks the next moment. They didn't even react before they died. Someone broke in. The other side has a bomb. The alarm sounded in the villa, and a few seconds later, fierce gunshots echoed throughout most of the forest, and almost all the firepower was concentrated on Li Anping at the door. But the bullets only passed through a residual image and shot on the ground behind Li Anping. The next moment, a series of screams rang out in the villa. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglango. Chapter 65. Outside the villa, the soldiers led by Qin Yang looked at each other, unable to believe what they saw. Inside the villa, the killing continued. Li Anping flashed and appeared in front of a man holding a machine gun. His right hand turned into a residual shadow and swung across the man's face. The man's head broke with a snap, and Li Anping in front of him had already walked away. Then there was another snap 10 meters away, and another pool of red and white blood spilled on the ground. In less than a minute, the gunshots in the villa had become sporadic. I surrender. Don't kill me. A man with tears and snot threw down his gun, raised his hand and ran towards the gate, but was hit in the chest by a stone that Li Anping picked up from the ground. He fell to the ground, and a large amount of blood flowed out from under the man's body. He twitched a few times and then there was no sound. I'll fight you. A small leader shouted and rushed towards Li Anping, holding a grenade with the fuse pulled out, wanting to die with Li Anping, but he had just run out and hadn't taken a few steps when his eyes went dark and Li Anping appeared in front of him. Then his hand lightened and the grenade had been roughly stuffed into his mouth by Li Anping, mixed with teeth and blood clots stuck in his throat. In the last explosion, he vaguely saw that Li Anping had appeared more than 20 meters away, and his bloody right hand was slowly withdrawing from the chest of another man. Sporadic gunshots rang out, but no one could hit Li Anping at all. His body was like a ghost, flashing everywhere in the villa, and even if a stray bullet hit Li Anping, it would not leave any trace. At this time, Li Anping's physical fitness, the evolved stratum corneum of the epidermis, the high-density muscles, and the layers of protective structures under the muscles, ordinary 1 or 2 bullets could not cause any harm to him. Bang! A man cried and screamed as he kept shooting at Li Anping in front of him. He kept pulling the trigger frantically until the bullets ran out. In his desperate eyes, Li Anping just walked slowly towards him, but left a trail of after images, and no bullet could really hit him. Li Anping walked in front of the man, and suddenly seemed to be attacked, his neck tilted, and his left hand stretched behind his head. When he spread his hand in front of the man, a bullet that looked golden was quietly lying in his palm. "Impossible, how is this possible?" the man screamed frantically, but saw Li Anping shaking his hand, and the bullet in his palm directly penetrated the man's brain. Everyone in the villa had already collapsed. When Li Anping came to the last person, the man's face was already blurred by tears and snot. He smiled foolishly and stuffed the barrel of the pistol into his mouth. Bang! All dead. When Qin Yang and his men walked into the villa, they saw such a scene of corpses and blood. Looking at Li Anping standing aside, there was not even a drop of blood on his black sportswear. If it weren't for his gloomy expression, he would look just like an ordinary college student on the street. Okay, don't look at it anymore. Li Qian looked at Qin Yang and his gang sweating profusely, laughed, clapped her hands and said, "This is the gap between people with abilities and ordinary people. You will encounter such opponents in the future, so if you don't want to do it, tell me when you go back. Now quickly search the whole house, search out all the evidence, drugs, and so on and gather them together. We'll leave first." After saying that, Li Qian left Qin Yang and others with a bitter smile on their faces, and took Li Anping away. "Can we get off here?" Li Qian stopped the car on the side of the road and said to Li Anping in the co-pilot seat. Okay. Li Anping opened the car door and stepped out while saying, "Call me if you have anything to say. Don't try to spy on me. Just send the information to my email." Wait a minute. Li Qian also got out of the car and ran to Li Anping, smiling embarrassedly. "It's so early today, why don't I treat you to dinner? We haven't had dinner together yet. If you want to help me, just do what I said just now." Li Anping frowned and replied. "Oh." Li Qian looked a little disappointed, and looked at Li Anping eagerly and said, "But General Xia asked me to try my best to build a good relationship with you. You can at least play with me, so that he can use me more, and I can help you better in Daxia Lanka. No need. If our relationship is a little cold, he will trust you more." After Li Anping said this, he walked around Li Qian in front of him and walked away. The other party's charming face like a vixen seemed to have no attraction to him at all. At this moment, Li Anping turned his head again and glanced across the street, frowning even more. A group of people got off several vans across the street, and the leader, Fang Qi, brought a group of younger brothers, standing across the street with a malicious look on Li Anping and Li Qian. No, to be more precise, it was looking at Li Qian. The look of a big brother with a group of minions made Li Anping very unhappy. Finally, Li Qian also found that something was wrong with Li Anping, turned her head and looked over, and also saw Fang Qi, who smiled maliciously at her. Li Anping felt that Fang Qi looked a little familiar. But he couldn't remember where he had seen him. He had seen Fang Qi when he was fighting with Kano, but Fang Qi had transformed at that time, so he naturally couldn't recognize him at this time. Li Qian had already done his homework and was very clear about the heads of the three major forces in Emerald City. He silently approached Li Anping a few steps and whispered, "This is Fang Qi, the leader of the Kailan group. The big guy next to him is called Giant Bear. They should both be capable people." After saying that, Li Anping looked at the big man next to Fang Qi. The other party had scars all over his face and his chest muscles were swollen as if they were about to explode. Seeing Li Anping looking at him, he showed a cruel smile and made a throat-cutting gesture. Then, Fang Qi left a group of younger brothers behind and walked across the road with Giant Bear. "Haha, Captain Li, I didn't expect to meet you by chance. I heard that you pick people up here every day recently. Is this your boyfriend?" Fang Qi said to Li Qian with a laugh, and glanced at Li Anping next to him and no longer cared. But Giant Bear stared at Li Anping with a bad look. Fang Qi naturally couldn't have met Li Qian by chance. He came to see Li Qian specifically. Although he admired or was afraid of the high-level power of Daxia, it did not mean that he would be afraid of Li Qian, a level 0 ability user. As for Li Anping, who was standing next to him, he was probably a level 1 ability user, and he was not taken seriously. His purpose of coming here was both to test and to warn. After all, Li Qian was a member of Daxia. If Fang Qi killed her directly, he would probably be buried with her within a month. But if Li Qian could not suppress the many strong men in Jade City, she could only blame herself for her lack of ability. Daxia could not draw forces from the northern front to support her. Fang Qi wanted Li Qian to understand this point. The situation in Jade City was not something that a little girl like her could control. It was better to be smart and everyone would have face. What he feared most was that Li Qian was too young, the kind of young man who did not know the importance of the situation, and would fight the black forces in Jade City to the end in either black or white. That would be troublesome. This kind of person doesn't know how high the sky is and how deep the earth is, but he likes to think of himself as righteous. It's not right to kill him, and it's not right not to kill him. Hearing Fang Qi's greeting, Li Qian said expressionlessly, "Mr. Fang is really thoughtful. We are just ordinary friends. Mr. Fang and I are not very familiar with each other, and there is nothing to talk about. I just hope you can manage your subordinates well and don't do anything illegal or fall into my hands." Although Li Qian looks charming, she has never been good to men other than Li Anping. Fang Qi smiled, but there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. How can there be nothing to talk about? Recently, a group of guys called Zhong Gaitang have been causing trouble for me. Miss Li, you know that the most feared thing for a legitimate businessman like me is to be troubled by others. Can you ask Miss Li for help and quickly catch those bad guys?" While Fang Qi was speaking, a black mind rushed out of him and rushed towards Li Qian and Li Anping in front of him. Even though Li Qian was only a level 0 ability user and could not see the spirit energy, she could still feel Fang Qi's malicious intent spreading around her nakedly. The suppression of the spirit energy by the superior ability user seemed to release her fear instinctively. Li Qian was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. She almost fought back on the spot, and even her back became cold at this moment. At this moment, a broad back walked in front of her and blocked the spirit energy released by Fang Qi. Fang Qi's eyes flashed with surprise, and he looked at Li Anping and said, "Oh, little brother, what's your name? Are you also from the Special Forces team?" The heavy pressure on Li Qian was no different from air in Li Anping's eyes. He glanced at Fang Qi, and without answering a word, he directly took Li Qian's hand and left. "Boy, our captain is asking you a question." The giant bear on the side suddenly got angry. Seeing that the boy was so arrogant, he stepped forward, grabbed Li Anping's shoulder with his palm, and wanted to drag him back. But he saw Li Anping turned his head and looked at him. At this moment, the giant bear's sight collided with Li Anping's sight. If the two people's sight were real objects, they would see that Li Anping easily crushed the giant bear into pieces. There was no thought, no malice, and no murderous intent. It was just a simple look. The giant bear seemed to have seen a ghost and could not help but take a step back. Almost even the hair on his back stood up. Li Anping's eyes were like looking at a piece of bread, a piece of meat, or a dish. Although the giant bear himself could not clearly describe this feeling, he felt the same thing. But after all, it was just a look. The giant bear took a step back and reacted. Then he was so angry that his face turned red. Feeling that he had lost face in front of everyone, he cursed angrily, and with a huge force in his right hand, he grabbed Li Anping's face. But he was stopped by Fang Qi with one hand. Fang Qi whispered in the giant bear's ear, "Do you want to die if you fight here?" The giant bear was startled, then calmed down. He stared at Li Anping with his eyes, wanting to remember his appearance. Li Anping asked as if nothing had happened, "Is there anything else?" Fang Qi smiled at Li Anping, "Nothing. Goodbye." He turned and left with the giant bear. Li Anping also looked at the backs of the two and turned and left. As the two turned around, Li Anping and Fang Qi both instructed the people around them. Send me a little brother to keep a close eye on this Li Qian 24 hours a day. Li Qian, I want you to help me investigate the Kailan group. I want all their information. The difference is that Li Anping can also hear the other party's orders. The first time the two people met face to face, because of the problems of concepts and force fields, the smell of gunpowder was overflowing. The only difference is that one can see the weight of the other party, while the other does not even know what he is facing. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Go. Chapter 66. Tianjin, the capital of Daxia. More than 20 million permanent residents gather in this most prosperous city of Daxia. Compared with this place, Emerald City is like a market town in the countryside. Even the maglev trains, holographic advertisements, and skyscrapers that are as dense as trees that are rare in other cities. People in Tianjin are already accustomed to them, and they are even what they face every day in their lives and work. And deep underground in this capital, various densely packed confidential buildings and military projects are guarding the entire Daxia without the knowledge of ordinary citizens. In an underground conference room somewhere. In the huge and empty conference room, there is only a round table and 4 chairs. 4 chairs surround the round table and are placed in the 4 directions of southeast, northwest, and northeast. However, at this time, there are only 2 people sitting in the conference room. Sitting in the north position is a white-haired old man. Although he has white hair, there are few wrinkles on his face, and there are no age spots or anything like that. His sharp eyes show his vitality that does not belong to a teenager, and his meticulously combed hair makes him look very serious. The old man was wearing a blue and white uniform with a 6-pointed star on his shoulder. He was looking at the display screen on the table with a serious face, which showed various materials related to the meeting. On the right side of the round table was a thin middle-aged man. He looked gentle and bookish with glasses, without any military aura. If it weren't for the blue and white uniform on his body and the 5-pointed star on his shoulder, I'm afraid others would think he was a university teacher. The middle-aged man was Xiaoliken's original body. In terms of appearance, he was completely different from his Phantom Dragon clone. At least the Phantom Dragon clone looked very powerful. Maybe this was also a design made for deterrence considerations. Xiaoliken coughed a few times, and when he saw the white-haired old man turned his head, he said, "Everyone, then let's do what we just said about the change of clothes this time. I have no objection. I have no problem either." 2 voices came from the 2 empty seats opposite Xiaoliken. The 2 people who were unable to attend the meeting communicated with Xiaoliken and the white-haired old man through remote communication. If anyone in the Great Xia Dragon Bird could see this scene, they would probably be able to guess who the 4 people in the meeting are. They are the top leaders of the Great Xia Dragon Bird. The first in the combat sequence of the entire country's ability users. The national organization that controls the strongest individual force in the military. In the world, it ranks alongside 5 other organizations and is known as the highest authority of one of the 6 most powerful superpower organizations in the world. Representing the strongest 3 giants, and the commander-in-chief of the entire Great Xia Dragon Bird. However, this time, only Xiaoliken came in person from the 3 giants, and the other 2 Yan emperors and Fei Zhang are still on the northern border. And the old man with neat white hair, who looks rigid and serious, is the nominal head of the Great Xia Dragon Bird, Song Bang. Seeing that the other 2 also agreed, Song Bang squinted his eyes and looked at the part about the army's uniform change in the information again. Finally, he nodded and said, "Let's do it this way first. Experiment in a small team first, and then we'll talk about it when there are results. Is it over? I'll leave first." The ghost cubs in the north have been very restless these days. A voice came from an empty seat. Wait, Zhurong Songbang stopped the end of the meeting, looked at SpecialAbilities seriously and asked, Litikan, I heard that your phantom dragon clone went to the south recently. SpecialAbilities was shocked, but on the surface he said calmly, that's right. There are some minor troubles, and I solved them. A mayor colluding with the Star Alliance is not a minor trouble. After Songbang said this, he looked at SpecialAbilities coldly, with obvious disgust in his eyes. As he finished speaking, the entire conference room was silent, and Zhurong and Fei Zhang also stopped talking. It is indeed not a small trouble. No matter what it is, as long as it involves the world's #1 superpower organization, it will not be a small matter. No one present will forget the humiliation that the Star Alliance brought to the great Xia Dragon Bird 10 years ago. Knowing that he could not hide it, SpecialAbilities said in a measured tone, it is a bit troublesome, but I have sent someone to investigate. The perfunctory tone can be heard by anyone, but compared with Songbang's problem, SpecialAbilities cares more about the other party's purpose. Is it to hit me? Or is it because of the Star Alliance? Or, did he find something? In the great Xia Dragon Bird, the discord between Songbang and SpecialAbilities has long been no secret among the top leaders. The other two, Zhurong and Fei Zhang, have no interest in intervening at this time and are happy to watch the fun. After all, one is a prince and aristocrat, and the other is just born a commoner. They represent different interests. Even if SpecialAbilities is already a veteran, there is no way to change this. Songbang smiled coldly, and then said, no need, I have sent my men to the Star Alliance to take over. I am afraid they have already arrived in the Federation. You just need to wait for the news. Without giving SpecialAbilities a chance to refute, Songbang continued, but there is still a criminal who has not been caught in the incident in Zhongdu this time. Is it Li Anping? He killed so many people, and you just let him go? Leave him in Emerald City. Old fox, do you really know? SpecialAbilities understood in his heart, and responded slightly, although Li Anping is a little impulsive, his motives are all good. The problem is that he is too young and lacks guidance. Moreover, he has good abilities, and I think he can be absorbed. Good ability? The most important thing we lack is people with good ability. Songbang did not let him go lightly, but continued, the state has national laws, and the family has family rules. He has killed so many people. If he can let go, how can we Daxia Longke have the nerve to care about so many capable people in the country? SpecialAbilities was a little angry at being lectured like this, and he said calmly, I will be responsible for this matter to the end. Ordinary people will not know about it. Now we are fighting the ice castle. What we lack is Li Anping with strong frontal combat ability, a capable person. His abilities will definitely shine on the battlefield. Songbang looked disdainfully, and moved his hand across the screen, and information about Li Anping popped up one by one. What's the use of having mutant abilities, stronger and faster? This kind of person is worse than a tank. Then the two of them began to argue with each other, gradually shifting from Li Anping to the situation in the north, domestic issues such as the management of capable people, and they were all competing against each other. Until the end, SpecialAbilities slapped his palm on the table and said angrily, I've taken a liking to Li Anping. If you want to kill him, kill me first. This is obviously a rogue approach. It is naturally impossible for Songbang to kill SpecialAbilities, at least not now, but it is hard to say whether he has thought so in private. General Fei was usually on good terms with SpecialAbilities. Seeing that the situation was deadlocked, he finally persuaded him, Mr. Song is right. If you don't arrest someone who is so anti-government, we, the great Xia Longke, will lose face. Just as Songbang when he smiled, the flying general changed the topic again, but I believe in General Xia's vision. He can't be wrong in his judgment of people. This Li Anping should be considered for absorption. A bunch of nonsense, Songbang cursed. The flying general continued as if he hadn't heard, but let this Li Anping come to Tianjin. Let's take a closer look and investigate. How about that? There was silence, and it was obvious that both Xia Ligang and Song Bang were a little moved by the flying general's proposal. After all, it was Xia Ligang who said, "I have no problem. Let him do it once in a few months." "How many months do you want us to wait?" "Let him fly over tomorrow," Song Bang said angrily. "No, I promised him to stay in Emerald City for a while." "Absurd!" Song Bang laughed angrily. "The majestic general of Xiaolongjie actually wants to accommodate a commoner." The two of them were about to quarrel again. At this time, Zhu Rong, who was promoted by Song Bang, said, "How about a month? I will also go back to Tianjin in a month. Let's take a look together then." "Okay," Xia Ligang agreed. "Haha, a commoner wants the three of us to watch it together. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at?" Song Bang smiled disdainfully, but in the end he agreed to the plan. The Emerald City on the other side is different from Xiaolongjie, who has not discovered the true horror of Li Anping. Jennifer looked at the video in front of her with horror on her face. Above is the scene of Kano and Li Anping fighting. Although she was also hypnotized by Xia Ligang, her mechanical eyes faithfully recorded the images she had seen. There is also a series of related data. In a coffee shop, Li Anping was drinking coffee and looking around casually. Li Qian, who was sitting opposite him, was on the phone. "Hey, are you Mr. Fang Han? We now have a set of shops in Blue Sky Plaza." "Hello, are you Mr. Yang Qi? We now provide private loans." "Hello, are you Mr. Zhang Li? We would like to conduct a questionnaire." I saw Li Qian making phone calls one after another, all pretending to be various telephone sales routines. The only thing that remained unchanged was that he would ask the other party's name at the beginning each time, and then cross out one name from the list on the table. Most of them hung up the phone directly after hearing half of it, but a few people showed interest and continued to ask questions. Fortunately, Li Qian had already prepared and did not show her appearance. After making more than 20 calls in a row, Li Qian felt her mouth was dry and her tongue was dry. When Li Anping handed her a glass of juice, she immediately started to smile. "How is it? Is this useful? Has it been discovered?" Li Anping asked. Li Qian smiled and said, "Of course it has not been discovered. Don't worry, the ability has been activated." Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 67. In the cafe, Li Qian put the briefcase she had been carrying on the table and took out a stack of old newspapers. Then she put the old newspapers on her hands and closed her eyes. This was not the first time for Li Anping to see Li Qian use her abilities, but every time he saw it, he felt it was magical. How many such magical abilities were there in the world made him slightly look forward to it. A few minutes later, Li Qian opened her eyes again, smiled slightly, and said, "Okay." After that, he handed the old newspaper to Li Anping. The original page had long since disappeared, leaving only a blank space. From tomorrow on, what the person who has been deactivated will be briefly described in words in this newspaper, what he does every day. This is the method Li Anping and Li Qian plan to use to investigate the Kailan group. The same method will be used in Zhonggai Hall. Their leader is a person with abilities, especially someone like Fang Qi. He has to ask at least 5 questions and is easily detected. But it's impossible for everyone around him to be able-bodied. The waiters, drivers, and accountants must all be ordinary people. And these ordinary people only need to collect their names and phone numbers through the police database in advance, and then call one by one and ask for their names to complete the interview. Then we can understand from the side what Fang Qi did and what the Kailan group did through what the ordinary people around Fang Qi did. Li Anping looked at the blank newspaper, nodded, and told Li Qian, "Next, you should pay attention to expanding the scope of surveillance and interviewing more people. It's like a puzzle. As long as all the surrounding puzzle pieces are put together, you can naturally know what the missing piece in the middle looks like. I understand seeing Li Anping's happy look. Li Qian was also very happy and added, I won't call them so intensively next time, and try to call them at different times to avoid attracting their attention. However, Li Qian was a little worried and asked Li Anping, it's okay for me to always activate my ability, but with so many people, can you see it every day? I have no problem, Lian said calmly. What he didn't tell Li Qian was that his brain was already different from ordinary people's. Whether it is inputting information, summarizing information, or memorizing information, his speed is far faster than ordinary people, just like how he used to memorize Indian and Spanish quickly. The difference is that his brain's memory and analysis capabilities are now stronger. Li Anping is confident that even if he monitors tens of thousands of people at the same time every day, he can fully remember what they are doing and analyze the trends of the entire situation. The only troublesome one is Violet, Li Anping said. Violet is an international group and even masters the technology of transforming people. Their company's technology level is very high. Even branches like Emerald City are all managed by computers and intelligently. With your ability, we can only know what some ordinary employees have done, but we know nothing about the information in the computer. There is no way, their technological level is even higher than our Emerald City government. We have tried phone tapping and cyber attacks, but they can't be solved. But I heard that the leader of their branch, Jennifer, is just an ordinary person. Maybe you can think of a way. We have to find his whereabouts first, Li Anping said solemnly. To find Jennifer's whereabouts, but also to collect information about Violet, this seems to be trapped in an infinite loop. It's really no good, we can only arrest a few people, Li Anping said. Li Qian on the side did not reject it. She is Li Anping's NC fan and supports Li Anping 100%. Just added, I can find some scum in Violet. There are many people who work with them in Emerald City, and they are not good people. Li Anping nodded in agreement and stopped worrying about things with Violet. Compared to this Violet branch, which is mainly engaged in smuggling, Kailan Tuan and Zhonggai Tang are even more evil. Li Anping still remembers the long-haired woman he met at the Lone Wolf headquarters. This Kailan group has an inexplicable cooperative relationship with Lone Wolf. Once the investigation is clear, no one can be let go. On the other side, when Li Anping was investigating others, someone also became interested in him. In a laboratory of the Violet Emerald City branch, Jennifer looked at the video on the screen in front of her, unable to calm down for a long time. That was the clip of Kano fighting Li Anping. Even though she had seen it many times, Jennifer was still shocked. Whether it's Kano's ability to copy other people's abilities or Li Anping's monster strength and speed, they are all amazing. Jennifer used the laboratory's server to analyze it many times, and based on the effects of the destruction of the environment in the picture, it was concluded that Li Anping's strength and speed were terrifying. The server estimates that Li Anping's ultimate strength may have exceeded 10 tons, and his speed is about to break the sound barrier. If Jennifer knew that Li Anping became more terrifying after eating Kano, I am afraid she would be shocked. But she also knew that Li Anping's final change was extremely unusual. After he absorbed Kano's changed liquid, his body temperature increased sharply and his body shape also changed. Jennifer's eyes flickered, but is this change caused by Kano's influence in his body, or is it the effect of Kano on his body? His body absorbed the changes that occurred in Kano. No matter what, Li Anping is of great research value to Violet. Kano's ability alone and the fact that Li Anping ate him are worth studying. Even if the secret can be cracked, it may not be possible for Violet to become a powerful organization like the Covenant. However, after Jennifer compared her memory with the recording in the mechanical eye, she knew that she had been hypnotized and brainwashed. In the whole of Daxia, the only one who was best at this kind of thing and could do it so perfectly was SpecialAbilities. Jennifer certainly knew how dangerous the Daxia dragon bird was. So after she found the video, She didn't dare to tell anyone. She directly uploaded it to her superior, Wilson, the president of Violet Daxia District, through the encrypted network. Beep. A video request popped up on the screen. Jennifer clicked OK, and suddenly a middle-aged foreigner with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a hooked nose appeared. The man looked at Jennifer with a serious look and asked, "Are you sure this video is real?" "I'm sure." "How many people know about this now?" "Only you and me, I dare not tell anyone else." "Well done," Wilson smiled. "Jennifer, I will reward you after capturing this experimental target. But now I want to ask you for your opinion. How much configuration do you think is needed to capture the target alive?" "It's hard to estimate." Violet shook her head. "The opponent's physical strength is amazing. You can also see in the video that ordinary poisons don't work. He also has a certain self-healing ability. The biggest problem is that none of us know what changes he has after eating Kano. If he can also copy other people's abilities, I'm afraid we have to send out S-level Doom Warriors. And this is Daxia, those dragon birds will not allow us to intervene so far, and the current power is already the limit of their tolerance. So I suggest that we don't capture him." "Don't capture," Wilson's voice rose. "Do you know what this means? This discovery may even change the whole world. Once we figure out their secrets, we will not only become the core of the company, but will even go down in history." "You actually want to leave such a big treasure to rot in Emerald City? Miss Jennifer, do you know what you are talking about?" "Of course I understand, Your Excellency. Please allow me to explain," Jennifer said slowly. "Li Anping is a person, not an animal. As long as he is a person, he can communicate. I think we can use gentle means to win him over. As far as I know, he is not a Daxia dragon bird, not a member of any large organization. We can definitely bring him closer to our camp." Jennifer saw Wilson frowning, fearing that the other party would not agree and alert the enemy, so she persuaded again. "I checked Li Anping's data in the Daxia government. He has been just an ordinary person since he was a child. He awakened his abilities and devoured Kano. These changes have only happened in these few months. I believe he still retains many ordinary people's behavior patterns and is worth trying to communicate with." Wilson instinctively disagreed with Jennifer's plan, but the other party was the person in charge of Emerald City and had some relationship with the top management of the group. If he is rejected here, Wilson is very worried that the other party will bypass him and find someone at a higher level. At that time, he will lose more than he gains. So he could only hold back his urgency and said, "Okay, I agree with you to use some conservative plans, but Ms. Jennifer, you only have 2 weeks. If you have not achieved results within 2 weeks, I will capture the target at all costs, even if it means sacrificing the Emerald City branch." "I have no objection, sir." Wilson turned off the video call and was silent for about 10 minutes. While watching the video sent by Jennifer, he thought about Li Anping in his mind, and finally picked up the phone and dialed a number. "Let me Tom come over to see you. I want him to go on a business trip." Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 68. The changes in the entire Emerald City affect more than just ability users. Whether it is the reshuffle in the officialdom or the arrest of a large number of black forces, every change will truly affect everyone living in the Emerald City. Zhang Hai is a businessman who started from scratch. Some time ago, he tried his best and used various methods to finally establish a relationship with a powerful figure in the municipal government. Being able to cooperate with the Jade municipal government on a project is a sure way to make money. A no-loss deal. But who knew that there was a lot of turmoil in the officialdom during this period, and all the acquaintances who were originally responsible for his project disappeared. But Zhang Hai had already invested his entire net worth of more than 10 million, and even mortgaged his house and car to the bank. Now that the person in charge is gone, the remaining people are playing ball with each other, but no one is willing to take over Zhang Hai's mess. In 1 week, Zhang Haiji lost a lot of his hair. On this day, Zhang Hai took his brother-in-law Caizun to the government office building again. They had been waiting at the gate at 8 o'clock in the morning, and waited until 11 o'clock at noon, only eating a few bites of steamed buns. Finally, a luxury car drove in from outside. Zhang Hai saw it and quickly followed. A fat man got out of the car, looked at Zhang Hai and said, "Mr. Zhang, why are you sitting at the door?" Zhang Hai cursed secretly, "I've been looking for you for almost a week. If I hadn't found a little star you took care of yesterday and bought him a bag worth more than 80,000 yuan, I might not have been able to see you." But when facing the fat man, he was still smiling. "Isn't it because I'm waiting for you, Minister Qian?" For the sake of his own project, Zhang Hai could only bear the secret fire in his heart and become his grandson. He no longer expects to continue working on this project. These guys who eat people without spitting out their bones will be satisfied as long as they can get back half of the money they invested. Minister Qian looked at his watch and said helplessly, "Sorry, Mr. Zhang, there is a meeting in the city, why don't you wait for me to meet?" Okay, we don't have anything big to do. You can do your business and we'll just wait." After another few hours of waiting, under the scorching sun, Zhang Hai and Caizun pressed their chests against their backs with hunger, but Minister Qian still didn't come out. Caizun couldn't help but complained, "Brother-in-law, do you think there is any use in waiting? I think that Qian is treating us like monkeys. As long as I can get the project money back, I can call him grandpa, no problem." Zhang Hai sighed, "Except for the 300,000 payment in the card, I have invested everything else in this project. If I can't get it back..." Zhang Hai couldn't imagine this situation. Just as he was talking, Minister Qian finally came out of the building. Zhang Hai hurriedly ran all the way, hoping that he could say a few words before the other party got in the car. Seeing Minister Qian waving to him, Zhang Hai ran over with a smile. Unexpectedly, just as he was about to say a few words, he saw Minister Qian take out his ringing mobile phone and start chatting with people all the way. The more he talked, the happier he became, and he didn't even look at Zhang Hai until he reached the parking lot. After finally watching the other party get into the car, Zhang Hai felt cold in his heart. Another day of waiting was in vain. Unexpectedly, the car just drove a few steps when it suddenly stopped again. The window was lowered, and Minister Qian turned to Zhang Hai and said, "Mr. Zhang, do you know Paragon?" Zhang Hai nodded quickly and said, "We know each other." He knew that it was a high-end club, and he heard that it was a place frequented by high-ranking officials or wealthy people. "Okay, where are you going to find me?" "I'm leaving first." So Zhang Hai took Caizun and quickly took a taxi to Paragon. Along the way, Zhang Hai raised some more money and spent more than 500 to buy some good cigarettes. Looking at the cigarette in his hand and thinking that he hadn't eaten anything all day, he felt really bad. When they arrived at Paragon, Zhang Hai left Caizun alone and went in to find Minister Qian. Unexpectedly, he came out again within a few minutes. The cigarettes were given, but few words were said. After coming out, he and Caizun were sitting on the steps. Suddenly they punched the cement floor and cursed, "A bunch of bastards." Then they collapsed on the steps like deflated rubber balls. They waited like this for another 5 or 6 hours. At 1 o'clock in the night, a staff member called Zhang Hai and Caizun, who were sleeping hazily, and asked them to settle the account. When they saw the bill, they were both shocked. It cost 220,000 yuan. The two looked at each other, but neither said anything. At this time, Minister Qian walked out drunkenly, patted Zhang Hai on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Xiao Zhang, thank you for your hard work today." Zhang Hai quickly took the opportunity to ask, "Minister Qian, how is my project going? Your problem is more complicated." The person in charge was transferred away, and now there is no evidence. it requires the cooperation of people from several departments. Just wait for us to notify you. Minister Qian went back to his room, and Zhang Hai had no choice but to settle the bill. Caizun on the side cursed as soon as he went out, "What a stupid thing, what are they playing with? More than 200,000 yuan was just gone without even a sound. What else can we do after spending the night? This is already considered cheap. If it were some second or third-rate models, I'm afraid it would be more than this." Zhang Hai smiled bitterly and said, "And I'm giving you face by letting you come to check out. That's it? I don't know if I have enough money left. Brother-in-law, are you going to wait any longer?" Caizun said angrily, "If you keep waiting like this, we will lose even the coffin." Zhang Hai shook his head and sat silently on the stairs. At around 10 o'clock the next morning, Minister Qian and 5 other well-dressed men walked out of the Paragon. Zhang Hai hurriedly greeted them, but he was stopped by Minister Qian before he said a word. "Okay, Mr. Zhang, thank you for your hard work. Come find me directly in my office later." Hearing these words, Zhang Hai was shocked. After putting a few people into the car, he and Caizun took a taxi directly to the office building again. This time, Minister Qian ordered him to register directly at the door, and then he went in. Zhang Hai was careful along the way and finally arrived at Minister Qian's office and knocked gently on the door. "Please come in." After Zhang Hai entered, he found that Minister Qian looked up at him and then continued to approve documents. So he could only stand aside with his head bowed, not saying anything, and just waiting. For a moment, the entire office was filled with the sound of turning pages. It wasn't until more than half an hour later that Minister Qian stretched himself and saw that Zhang Hai was still standing. A trace of pity flashed in his eyes. He knew that in fact, Zhang Hai had suffered a disaster this time, and he himself had not made any mistakes. After all, not just anyone could entertain him. If Zhang Hai hadn't been so smart, he wouldn't have even seen him. For example, a few days ago, a small business owner also had his payment for goods stolen. He asked for it several times but did not get it back, so he went to petition directly. As a result, he is still being detained and will be sent back to his hometown in a few days. Minister Qian coughed dryly and saw Zhang Hai raised his head to look at him and said, "Mr. Zhang, your matter is more complicated. I think you are an honest person, so I will tell you straight. You can't even think about this coming back." Zhang Hai was shocked. Could it be that the money was really wasted? Minister Qian continued, "This involves several departments. They are at the same level as me. I alone can't help you anymore." Seeing Zhang Hai's despair, Minister Qian added, "But if this matter can alert the boss, maybe there will be a turn for the better." Zhang Hai looked at Minister Qian expectantly, but found that the other party stopped talking and stared at him with a smile on his face. Zhang Hai's heart moved and he immediately took out the bank card from his wallet. Calculating the money spent yesterday, there are still 70,000 to 80,000 yuan in it. I'm afraid it still can't satisfy Minister Qian's appetite, but he only has this little money left. He gritted his teeth and immediately handed everything over to Minister Qian. Minister Qian nodded with satisfaction, waved his hand and said, "Okay, you go out first and wait for me to give you news." Zhang Hai walked out of the office building with a heavy heart. He probably had little hope of getting the project money back. If all his belongings were lost like this, half of his life's hard work would be ruined. More than that, Zhang Hai felt sad when he thought about his wife, his son who had just entered high school, and his parents who had been farmers all their lives. Brother-in-law, brother-in-law." When Caizun saw Zhang Hai coming out, he quickly ran up and asked, "Brother-in-law, how is it? Do you want the money back?" Money. When Zhang Hai heard this, his heart suddenly hurt, and he couldn't help but shed tears. He couldn't help but feel the grievances and anger he had felt over the past few days. He looked back at the office building. He really wanted to rush in and beat up all those vampires and make them spit out their money. Who knew that when he looked back, he saw something strange. Zhang Hai pointed to the roof of the 10th floor of the office building and said stupidly, "What is that?" "What?" Caizun also looked towards the roof. After all, he was younger than Zhang Hai and his eyesight was much better. Looking in the direction of Zhang Hai's finger, a trace of disbelief seemed to flash across his face. After a few seconds, he said hesitantly, "Is that, Minister Qian?" On the roof of the office building, Minister Qian was pale and sweating profusely. His 2 feet were suspended outside the building. A man was holding his collar with one hand to prevent him from falling. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 69. Li Anping looked at the frightened fat man in front of him, a trace of disgust flashing in his eyes. Report all the real estate, bank account numbers, funds, and stocks in your name. When Minister Qian heard what Li Anping said, a cruel look appeared on his face, and he said sternly, "Do you know what you are doing? Do you know who I am? It is illegal for you to do this." Li Anping sneered and let go of his right hand. A scream rang out. Minister Qian held onto Li Anping's right hand and shouted, "Put me up, pull me up quickly." However, Li Anping remained unmoved. He saw Minister Qian's arm descending inch by inch and slowly slipping away from Li Anping's right hand. He finally couldn't bear the pressure and shouted, I say, pull me, go up." Li Anping snorted coldly, stretched out his left hand and threw it back to the roof. At this time, Minister Qian's limbs were sore and weak, and he collapsed on the ground, but he felt more at ease than ever before. "Say it." Li Anping saw the fat man lying on the ground, his eyes rolling around, and sneered in his heart, so he took out the newspaper in his arms and read a few things. These are all things that Minister Qian thinks he has done secretly and that no one should know about. After Minister Qian heard this, he looked at Li Anping in disbelief. "How do you know? Who are you?" "I know everything." Li Anping looked at Minister Qian coldly and said, "If you hadn't gone too far during this period, I didn't want to take care of these nonsense. Just tell them all honestly, and it will save you from the 10th floor. If you fall down the stairs, you'll turn into a meatloaf." Seeing that Minister Qian was still hesitant, Li Anping became impatient. He would have killed the other party before, so there was no such trouble. So he took a few steps forward and stepped on the opponent's thigh. Ah! There was an obvious crisp sound, and Minister Qian's thigh bone was directly broken. But he had no time to lament. When he saw Li Anping put his foot on his other leg, he immediately poured out all his property like beans from a bamboo tube. Even under Li Anping's pressure, he was transferred to the name of his wife, brother, and parents. After saying this, Minister Qian seemed to have aged 10 years and no longer looked as energetic as usual. He asked dejectedly, "Where are you from? From the Anti-Corruption Bureau? Or from the Integrity Department?" Seeing that Li Anping ignored him, he continued, "Do you think I want to do this? Do you know how many mouths are waiting for food? If I don't charge, others will, so at least I can do something real." Li Anping still ignored him, just took out his mobile phone and called Li Qian. "It was sent to your email, have you received it?" "Okay." Li Anping nodded, hung up the phone, turned to Minister Qian on the ground and said, "In 1 week at most, all the property under your name will be frozen and then recovered. As for your own fate, I think you will also clear." At this moment, the iron door on the top floor was knocked loudly, and the security guard's voice came from inside. "Is there anyone? Someone inside, please open the door. I'm in there. Come and save me." After Minister Qian shouted these words, he subconsciously looked back towards Li Anping's place. but the entire rooftop was empty except for him. There was no one anywhere. On the other side, Li Qian asked Qin Yang and his men to find people arrested by various government agencies in Emerald City. All were corrupt officials caught based on his newspaper records. During this period, as Li Qian kept calling according to the list in her hand, her abilities spread like newspapers. Thousands of people in the entire Emerald City are currently being monitored in this way, and Li Anping still only has one newspaper in his hand. This is another extension of Li Qian's ability. No matter how many people she monitors, they can all be displayed in a newspaper that can never be turned over and can be queried by name. Originally, Li Anping was just monitoring the local black forces, and then killed those who deserved to be killed, and slaughtered those who deserved to be slaughtered. But the Emerald City is, after all, a place where dark forces are rampant. Many local government officials have connections with underground forces, so Li Qian's surveillance targets gradually shift towards the government. Originally, since Li Anping promised SpecialAbilities not to attack government officials, he didn't want to take action. But after seeing some people, he got really angry. Although they did not kill people and set fires, they broke bones and sucked marrow and embezzled property, which was more ruthless than killing people. So Li Anping couldn't help but take action himself, but this time he didn't kill the other party directly like before, but asked the other party to reveal all his property, let SpecialAbilities and others ransack the house, and then divided part of the money to compensate those victims. This hurts them more than killing them. With a series of arrests, the officialdom of Emerald City once again experienced a major earthquake. With this change, the entire officialdom of Emerald City suddenly experienced a breeze. It seemed that under the severe blow from the upper levels, no one dared to neglect of duty, corruption, and perversion of the law. But how long can humans, the most fickle of animals, maintain this beautiful situation? In Li Anping's room, apart from a bed, there was only a table with a computer. This was specially arranged by Li Anping because he only needed a place to live. However, Li Qian still gave him a credit card with a limit of 1 million so that he didn't have to worry about money. At this time, Li Anping was alone in the room. I saw in the center of the room, his eyes were closed, and he was holding a handstand on the floor with the little index finger of his left hand. At this time, Li Anping's heart was calm, but he heard all kinds of sounds. The couple upstairs quarreled. The sound of a couple next door making love. The sound of the TV, the sound of the radio. The sound of insects crawling under the floor. He could even sense the flow of air in the room. Obviously, after eating Kano, his 5 senses were greatly enhanced as his body was transformed and improved. Now once he focuses on something, his brain will automatically collect information around him. The sounds he doesn't want to hear, the things he doesn't want to see, and the things he doesn't want to feel will all try to get into his mind. Suddenly opening his eyes, a red light flashed in Li Anping's eyes. He ended his handstand and stood up again, and started boxing. It was just a simple straight punch, hook, and swing punch, but every time Li Anping lightly threw a punch, the wind from the punch would blow through the entire room, and then hit the wall, making a snap, so that he didn't dare to punch with all his strength. He didn't expect these actions to increase his strength. He just wanted to master his strength too well. He was not used to the sudden increase in strength after eating Kano. Or maybe he just wanted to find something to do to distract his attention. If he really wanted to exercise, he would rather go to the deserted suburbs like before, where he could let go. There are more than 100 souls in his body waiting to be used. However, there have been a lot of things in Emerald City recently, so he can only stay in the city temporarily. And his current goal is to become stronger, make his strength stronger, and be able to fully implement his will. The second goal is to clean up Emerald City. He really can't stand this sinful city. If he changed to the past, I'm afraid he would know the situation here and could only curse a few words, and could only bear it in his heart. But now it's different. He can do things according to his own ideas. And in the process of cleaning up Emerald City, he can also absorb more souls and become stronger. Moreover, this can avoid direct confrontation with the country, and make it difficult for his ability to become stronger by absorbing human souls to be exposed. Li Anping's true ability will never be exposed until he is sure that he can at least confront a country head-on. After the boxing, Li Anping opened the newspaper and read it again. Then he wrote down all the people who needed to be killed or captured, sent them to Li Qian, and then prepared for the aftermath. Li Anping is like a hunter, except that he uses the newspaper in his hand to determine the target. Li Anping turned on the computer and started surfing the internet. In addition to newspapers, there are also many things that can't be seen in newspapers, such as blogs and forums on the internet. Once Li Anping noticed it, he would ask Li Qian to investigate. As a result, he didn't go online for long, and a text file suddenly popped up in the center of the computer screen. Another line of words popped up on it. "Hello, is this Li Anping?" Li Anping narrowed his eyes, sensed it carefully, and listened for a while, and found that there was no ambush nearby. He took out his mobile phone and was about to dial Li Qian's number. After thinking about it, he put the phone back and put his hands on the keyboard. "It's me, who are you?" "Hello Mr. Li, forgive me for not being able to tell you my identity, because your power is too strong, I still have to be careful. When I confirm that you are no longer hostile to us, I will tell you my identity. What do you want to see me for?" "I am here to express my goodwill. If you open the door now, you can see a gift we have prepared for you." Li Anping turned his head and looked at the door, but he didn't feel anything outside the door. He stood up and opened the door directly, and saw a rectangular box lying quietly at the door. "Take the box back and put it on the computer desk." Li Anping thought about it and decided to open the box. Anyway, he wouldn't die even if it was a bomb. Unpacking the outermost paper box, there was an antique wooden box inside. Li Anping opened the box and saw an elegant long knife fixed in the box. The blade is 1 meter 2 or 3 meters long, about 3 to 2 fingers wide, with a little arc, and the layers of patterns on the blade show superb forging skills. This is a good knife. Even an amateur like Li Anping can tell it at first glance. At this time, another line of words popped up on the computer screen. "You can hold the handle tightly, and it will show its true form." Hearing this, Li Anping grabbed the handle with his right hand and lifted the knife up. Then he exerted a little force. Buzz! It was like a giant dragon awakening. The whole blade emitted a faint red light. With Li Anping's superhuman sense of touch and vision, he could feel that the whole blade was vibrating at an ultra-high frequency. At the same time, words were typed on the computer screen again. "This is the latest high-frequency knife, using our newly developed super-elastic material. The entire shape perfectly meets the mechanical design of chopping, slashing, and other actions. The handle is designed with a pressure sensing system and a palm print detection system, which will automatically record the palm print of the first user. Only when he pinches the handle and generates a grip force of more than 10 kilograms, the entire blade will vibrate at a frequency of more than 20,000 times per second. It can easily cut most materials." Li Anping's face showed appreciation, and he gently slid the high-frequency knife across the floor. Without feeling any resistance, he cut a hole in the wooden floor under his feet. It felt like cutting a piece of tofu. Li Anping smiled and sat back in his seat. "I like this gift very much. But you better not add any disgusting gadgets on it. Please rest assured, this is just our goodwill. We definitely did not do anything to this knife." Then the text disappeared. Seeing Li Anping's fond expression on the screen, Jennifer breathed a sigh of relief. This was the best gift she could give within her authority. This high-frequency knife was not even fully activated inside the violet. After all, although it is indestructible, it is only suitable for close combat, has a small scope of application, and is expensive. A few minutes later, Li Anping turned off the computer, and Jennifer could no longer observe the other party through the camera on the other party's computer screen. But at least it's a good start, Jennifer thought. Next, just need to communicate more and slowly increase Li Anping's favor. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglang Guo. Chapter 70. The next day, Li Qian parked the car on the street. After a while, she saw Li Anping coming up from a distance. He threw a rectangular package to Li Qian. "What is it?" Li Qian asked. "Someone gave me a high-frequency knife. Can you help me check if there is any tampering inside?" Li Qian was surprised and said, "High-frequency knife? Can this thing be carried around? Who gave it to you?" Although she didn't know much about the current technological development of the Daxia army, in her impression, most high-frequency knives are currently used for industrial and medical purposes, and there are no high-frequency weapons that can be mass-produced and miniaturized. "I don't know, it shouldn't be tampered with, but you should still check it. This way I can use it with more confidence." Li Qian nodded to show that she understood, and Li Anping on the side added again, "Don't let others know." "I understand." Then Li Qian took out a bag of folders and handed it to Li Anping. "This is what you want to check, information about Violet, Zhongai Hall, and Kylan Group. It took me a lot of effort to find it." Although Li Qian's ability is excellent, such real-time monitoring is mainly aimed at current events, and there is little knowledge about what the three major organizations have done in the past. And the information and evidence in this regard have been hidden by the police officers who colluded with the three major organizations in the past. After all, in the past, even if the evidence was sent to the police station in Emerald City, it might be sent back to the table of those underworld bosses the next day. Li Anping nodded, opened the file bag, and began to read it. Li Qian on the side started the car directly, walked into the traffic, and glanced at Li Anping cautiously. She had read the information about the three major organizations beforehand, especially the part about Zhongyatang and Kylan Group. Both Fang Qi and Lucien were already qualified as scumbags. Lucien was a local veteran who was good at fraud, extortion, and robbery. Even his daughter-in-law was robbed. Otherwise, how could a beautiful college student from a prestigious university marry a fool with an IQ of less than 80? As for Fang Qi, he should have a deep relationship with the Bai royal family. He was arrogant and domineering to the extreme. And the entire Kylan group was a war profiteer. In the more than a year since they came to Emerald City, there have been 142 casualties in the records alone. Not to mention that they had been renting girls from Lone Wolf to be comfort women for the group members. Sure enough, when Li Qian secretly looked at Li Anping, she found that his brows were getting tighter and tighter. It seemed that she felt Li Anping's anger. Li Qian couldn't help but swallowed quietly, and the car slowed down unconsciously. After a long time, Li Anping put the information back into the file bag. His face was calm, and he could not tell whether he was happy or angry. Li Qian subconsciously lowered her voice to say something, but Li Anping had already taken the lead and said, "No need to say, I will go to them tonight. I can ignore the younger brothers at the bottom of Zhongai Hall, but I will not let any of the damned people in his file go." Li Qian would not pity those scumbags, but for Li Anping's safety, she had to consider the position of Daxia Longke in this regard. So she did not persuade Li Anping to change his decision, but asked directly, "What about SpecialAbilities? Call him." Li Anping decided to talk to SpecialAbilities. If the other party did not lie to him last time, and the clone really only had 1/8 of his strength, then he would not be sure of winning against SpecialAbilities in his full state. And there are at least 2 or 3 strong men of this level in Daxia Longke. The call was connected. "Hello, you're looking for me?" SpecialAbilities' tone sounded like he was in a bad mood. "It just so happens that I have something to tell you. Come to Tianjin next week." Li Anping took the phone. "Let's talk about going to Tianjin. I have something to tell you now." I will go out tonight. All the people in the Kylan group must die. People like Lucien in the Zhongai Hall must also die. Death-like silence came from the other end of the phone. When Xiaoligang spoke again, his words were full of coldness. Do you know what it means to put the overall situation first? In this situation, I don't want to see any chaos in the south. Once the top leaders of the Zhongai Hall are killed, what if more than 100,000 of his younger brothers take the opportunity to cause trouble? Do you know how many eyes are staring at Daxia? As for the Kylan group, I can allow you to kill them all, but Fang Qi must stay. He has the blood of the Bai royal family. I don't want to give the Bai kingdom an excuse at this moment to let them interfere in the affairs of the Emerald City. When the two fronts go to war, even the great Xia dragon bird can hardly afford it. Bad people must be punished for doing bad things. And these scums, their punishment is death penalty, which will be carried out by me personally. Li Anping said word by word. I am not interested in the overall view you mentioned. If I knew what they did earlier, I would have killed them all when I killed Kano. Because every extra minute they live is a huge harm to others. You, Xiaolai said in an airy voice, do you think you are acting? Or a comic? Do you think you are a superhero? Reality is not that simple. Do you think you are a good person just because you killed Lucien? Is it right? Have you ever thought about what will happen to Lucien's parents and his children? Have you ever thought about what will happen to those innocent people who were hurt when Zhongai Hall was in chaos and his brothers made trouble after his death? And are all the people in Zhongai Hall bad? Those accountants, drivers, cleaners, security guards who worked for him, those ordinary people lost their jobs because of your momentary pleasure. How can they support their families? How can they make a living? And what about Fang Qi? What if a dozen small countries in the south are all eyeing us? Usually they lie in front of us like dogs, but now we are fighting with Ice Castle. It would be good if they don't hold us back. If you kill Fang Qi, wouldn't it give Bai Yu an excuse to intervene? Once Bai Yu intervenes, the other Fulun and Yingxi will come up one by one to take a bite. Then the whole Daxia will be covered by war. If the situation deteriorates like this, do you know how many people will die? Li Anping, let me tell you, it's not that I don't want Fang Qi to die, and I don't want to support Zhongai Hall, but they must be stable now. Once Ice Castle withdraws its troops, I promise you that I will destroy them as soon as possible. After saying this, Xiaoligang sighed. If Li Anping still doesn't change his mind after saying so much, then he can't do anything. Just do what you have to do. Xiaoligang quietly waited for Li Anping's answer. Finally, the other side spoke. Some people do evil, and the consequences of their evil deeds are not a reason for us to indulge them. Those who want to start a war and make trouble are wrong. Good people should not pay for their threats, and the citizens of Emerald City should not be threatened by the Kylan group and Zhongai Hall at all times. Li Anping continued, this matter is not negotiable. Can he be allowed to do evil because of his background? You bastard, Xiaoligang said, but then he said, I lost to you, so do you think this will work? You can kill whoever you want, but Zhongai Hall cannot be in chaos. Let our people take over. Don't worry, we will guide him in the right direction. As for Fang Qi, at least keep him alive. We are useful. Okay, Li Anping thought for a while and replied. Then it's settled. After hanging up the phone, someone next to Xiaoligang chuckled, which came from a landline. Old Xia, it's not like you to be so polite, he doesn't appreciate your kindness. Is it worth it for you? For this Li Anping, Song Bang is getting more and more demanding. That was the voice of the flying general. He is excellent and has great potential. He is not afraid of the powerful and has the power to support him. As for the old man, Xiaoligang laughed, it's okay. He wants the command of the north, right? Just give it to him. But it's not good for him to keep inserting his own people into the army. There is still a year before the imperial election begins. The royal families have already started to act. Songbang seems to want to support his son to take the throne. The other 8 royal families are not vegetarians either. It is not so easy for the Song family to take the throne. Does he really think it is so easy to be an emperor? On the other side, after Li Anping hung up the phone, he asked Li Qian to stop the car. He didn't get out of the car, just looking at the roadside. Li Qian felt a little curious. She looked in the direction he looked and saw a scarred strong man beating a young man. In the restaurant, the giant bear knocked a waiter to the ground with one punch, and then pointed at the people around him and said lazily, "What? Disobedient. I tell you, if you don't pay the management fee today, you can't keep your store open." "But you just came to collect the management fee yesterday," a fat female cashier asked tremblingly. The giant bear looked at him and laughed. He walked to the woman step by step. Seeing that she lowered her head and didn't dare to look at him directly, he slapped the woman on the head. "You paid it, right?" "Pa pa pa," he slapped the woman's face one after another, repeating, "You paid it, right? We came to collect it yesterday, right? You don't want to give it, right?" The female cashier cried and said, "No, you didn't collect the management fee." The people on the side looked at the giant bear angrily, clenched their fists, but no one caught up. Whether it was the opponent's scar, body size, or the fierce reputation of the Kylan group, they all dispersed their courage. Seeing that his threat had taken effect, the giant bear laughed and walked to the door. "Someone will come to collect it tomorrow. If you still drag your feet and don't pay, I don't know what will happen." After saying that, the giant bear laughed wildly and walked out. He felt very comfortable in his heart. Originally, it would never be the turn of a high-level person like him to collect protection fees. But the giant bear likes this kind of free food and drink. In the past, when he was a mercenary in the south, he had to fight for money with his life. It's not as comfortable as here in Emerald City. There are so many weak chickens and sheep, and you can easily get money from them. Suddenly, the giant bear stopped and looked in the direction of Li Anping. When he saw Li Anping and Li Qian sitting in the car, he grinned and walked towards them. The giant bear knocked on the car window in front of Li Anping and saw that the other party didn't open the window. He didn't care. Glancing at Li Qian in the driver's seat, the giant bear said to Li Anping, "I know you can hear it. Tell your girlfriend that we have arrested so many people in the past 2 days. It's enough. Don't meddle in other people's business. Otherwise, if something happens, we will not be responsible." Li Anping did not answer him, but the giant bear saw the other party's trembling shoulders, frightened eyes, and pale face showing an interesting expression. If it was on the battlefield in the south, he would probably not be able to help but grab this pretty boy and stab him a few times. The giant bear finally raised his middle finger to Li Anping and left. But who knew that he had just taken 2 steps when he felt a powerful palm grabbing his neck from behind, making him unable to move. "Let's start with you."